Hello, my dear listener, and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm Jason Paul. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to a medium called Jarrod Mason. Now, the episode is titled Trauma to Truth, Mediumship as a Path of Healing. So this episode really is about mediumship beyond performance. It's about how trauma, sensitivity, and neurodiversity can become doorways to spiritual truth. And this conversation with Jarrod really was rooted in honesty, humility, and lived experiences. Now, Jarrod's journey didn't begin with religion or belief. It began with survival. So this is not a glossy spiritual story. It's a very real one. And we're going to explore how healing, the path, is very inseparable to that of serving the spirit world. So we're going to be talking through some of Jarrod's trauma, the abuse he suffered at an early age, and how that early pain really did shape his sensitivity rather than destroying it. Now, we also talk about how trauma can be something that opens perception rather than closes it, and the difference between bypassing trauma and actually integrating it. And that's how a lot of addictions can come about. And me and Jarrod both talk about our experiences with addiction. And I know it's a path that many people find themselves going down because you're sort of searching for something to make you feel complete. And we do touch on that in this conversation. We also talk about as well the letting go as mediums of needing to chase yeses, and even the addiction to evidence and how that can sort of fuel the ego by way of validation, and why mediumship can become ego-driven if unchecked. Now, I know many mediums who've got big egos, and it's not needed. It's not needed. And we talked about Jarrod's unfolding of his mediumship as well, and how nature really is the greatest teacher. So enjoy this conversation. So, Jarrod Mason, welcome, my dear, to the Soul Sync podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Jason. It's good to be here.
It is. It's lovely. And I know that this has been anticipated. I say long anticipated, not as long anticipated as some guests, trust me. But I've been looking forward to talking to you because when you kindly reached out to me, I saw a lot of similarities between our backgrounds, how you've kind of come into mediumship. And, I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, good. Me too.
So I guess sort of taking us, you are a medium firstly, and I know you have been unfolding your mediumship over quite some years, but I'd like to go sort of back in time, Jarrod, to understand sort of how you came to come into this world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, going way, way back. I mean, I wasn't aware of the spirit world per se as a child. However, I would offer that I had spiritual experiences. So my family life was fine. It was normal. It was in the 1970s I was born. Unfortunately, my father was a heavy drinker and quite a violent man at times. And I often found myself, well, obviously I've got ADHD to start with, obviously. So, but as a child,
so have I. Yeah, I have as well. And I've talked about that a lot on this podcast. So that's an interesting thing in itself, actually.
Yeah.
But sorry, carry on, Jed.
Yeah. Well, my childhood was very confusing, really. I mean, just to digress slightly, I never felt normal. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know what normal is, but I always felt like, that life was a bit complicated, bit of a struggle in many ways. Like I said, my dad was violent at times, and through that, I used to find myself, running away and spending time on my own, really. And one of the places I used to run to was the bottom of my garden. It was like really overgrown, and there was like lots of trees and things. And I would sort of run away and hide, or usually climb a tree, just to get away from the madness, really. And I remember thinking back that at those times, I used to look at the moon, and it was like I used to speak to the moon. I didn't, I had no inkling of a god or the spirit world or anything, but I used to express myself to the moon, and I just knew in the deepest part of me that I was talking to something, but what that was, I couldn't articulate that as a child.
When that was just on that point, so you was, it sounds, like an awful experience in itself. So you were going, how was that kind of happening? You were talking, but was it kind of in your mind? What was?
Yeah,
because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it was an. I mean, obviously, I was going through a traumatic experience at the time, and there was other things going on as well from my childhood, and I needed someone to outpour to, really, to sort of, because I couldn't understand as a child, why, my dad wanted to hurt me and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And like, in regards, I know it was like a crying out of my soul, really, just for some sort of understanding, I think, more than anything. And, I suppose I was reflecting. I was crying out, really, I suppose, for something in many respects. I know around that time as well, thinking back, is I did start to have as a child out-of-body experiences where I'd go to bed of a night time and it would always start the same way. In that I used to have this orange electric fire in my room. Just, mine were going back to the 1970s. So I've seen.
Sounds very meditative. Yes. Very good for meditation. One of those.
Yeah. And I remember that it happened quite frequently as a child, and I'd wake up and I just remember I'd see the orange of the fire, and then I'd sort of float out my room and go into my mum and dad's room and look at my mum and dad. And I never used to leave the house, but this would happen quite frequently. And again, I think it was sort of triggered by that sort of period I was going through, really, in my life. And they did come back as an adult only a couple of times, but that's what happened to me as a child. And like I said, I didn't have an inkling of the spirit world at all. I didn't put any of this down to a religious thing. It was more just a natural calling within me for some sort of understanding. That's the only way I can explain it.
So I guess now, on reflection, you now know that to have been the spirit world that you was communicating.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, obviously, as an adult, you can look back on these times, and obviously, I've done a lot of self-development through through the latter years of my life, and obviously, I do reflect on my childhood, and that little boy's still inside me. There's no getting rid of him, unfortunately. I bury him under the, under my age and under the years and under experience and under the life I've spent, but he's still in there somewhere. So, sometimes I have to revisit these things, obviously, because otherwise they just become detriments to certainly the mediumship.
It's interesting you say that, because when you were saying about going back to the, being a child, that being a very hard time for you, I think my dark night of the soul for me, Jed, it was very much in my 20s. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes, even when I brush my teeth now, I have a photo sometimes of me as a child at 5 years old to try and bring out that childlike. So it was, in stark contrast to hear you say that. Mm-hmm. So you had these experiences, and how was it continuous? Because it sounds to me like you're describing a gap then, that you had these kind of experiences at a young age, and then when did
I mean if we go into my teenage years, really, I was just living a normal life, really. I found school hard. I found I didn't find friendships hard. I made friends okay, but sort of like I tempered my sort of, I was quite a sensitive child, obviously, so the way I got around, people at school and that was just to try and be the joker and things like that. And I did have a...
Describing me as well. This is an ADHD thing. There's something about that. It's not that we're naughty. We're just misunderstood a lot of the time.
Yeah.
even my school years were very turbulent. Friendships wouldn't come easy to me, mainly because I'd always be darting from here to here.
Yeah.
But it's, school was not an easy experience for me.
No.
And I don't think it is for people with ADHD, because we're very much abstract thinkers.
Exactly. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is like, even as a child, I know, like, the world didn't, I don't know, it was sort of distorted, and I felt that my place within life and within the world was like a square peg in a round hole. And I felt that all the time. So, I was trying to understand that. But then obviously, with some of the trauma I went through as well, I mean, around the age of sort of 14, while I was calling out for sort of some help, I was then helping out at a place doing some work experience, and then I was sexually abused by the person that was meant to be looking after me. So that was also trauma on top of trauma. So by the time I reached sort of my adult year, very late teens, early adults, I was a confused person. I was really struggling. So, as well as having ADHD, which I didn't know at the time, obviously what that was. Obviously, I'd come through a hell of a lot of trauma, and there you go, you sort of kicked out. There you go and get on with your life, with work, go and build a life for yourself as a young adult. And that was not easy. And I did turn to alcohol, substances to try to quiet my mind in many ways. And also as that sort of solace, because my heart was always, my soul, I don't know, it was always seeking for some sort of healing and understanding. And ultimately, it's easy to take a drink or take a drug and numb that somewhat and not have to think about it for a while.
Mm. Well, yeah, even on that point, well, I think you could break that down into so many things. I think what you've just said is incredibly moving, but I think even on substances, I think a lot of people, even with ADHD, end up kind of coming into this relationship with drugs where actually they're self-medicating at the beginning.
Exactly.
Because they're not getting the help or support, or with so many people, they don't even realise they've got ADHD. I think I'd always had a suspicion that I think my mum, because I didn't get diagnosed until very late in my life. I say very late.
Yeah, me too.
Hello. Yeah, I think there's some people who are probably diagnosed even later than me, but I was about 30 or 30. Actually, no, do you know what? I'm so bad with dates, Jed. I'm so bad. When I give dates, I'm just always awful. But I must have been diagnosed about 6 years ago. But before then, I had this relationship where I didn't know if I even wanted to take the medication because of the fact that it was amphetamine based. But even myself, off the back of a lot of trauma that I received when I was serving as a police officer, and when I came out of the police like a shell of a person, traumatized from it. It wasn't actually that even when I was using substances to self-medicate, etc., it wasn't immediately after, but trauma can come up in very different periods of one life. It's not always immediately after. It's not always, it can come up again even when you think that you've addressed it. But I think on that point of, I could talk a whole hour, Jed, even about substances, but, we need to change the way we view drugs. And I saw that firsthand in the police. We need to change the way we stop criminalising people who are even using it in the first place, because there's a stigma around it. So, so you was in that period of your life. Sounds very similar to my life, which I must say, Jed, is why I wanted you to come on the podcast, because there is a lot of similarities there. And, I think people need to, conversations like this need to happen, especially because there's such a sense of shame around drugs as well. Yeah. And even people, the funny thing is that shame normally only lives actually a lot of the time with the person. There's always people around who can help, but we do need to change the way that we view this societally. And I do think we are starting to, but I still think there's lots of work to be done. So that's my 2 pence on that, Jed. But it's, I have to say on the last note of that, I do think that there is a tendency, and I do spot this, mainly because of the fact that I don't know about you, but being an ADHD person, and I seem to attract other ADHD people like a magnet. I don't know what it is. Maybe well, I find I can instantly tell as well people who've got ADHD generally because there's a certain pace of conversation. And I am having to say as well that I'm coming across so many mediums these days that seem to, I think that neurodiversity, we are wired differently. We perceive the world differently. I don't believe it's an accident that we're put on this planet.
Yeah.
We just happen to be ADHD. No, we were made to be that way. We were made to be tuned.
I totally agree. Like, there was a tutor I had at one point, Matthew Smith, and I know he made a comment about neurodiversity and trauma, etc., in that it's actually a help to the spirit world, in his opinion, in order, that vulnerability that's within us is actually, something that they can use, or they can attune with us. It's somewhat way easy because we've got this vulnerability, within the the ego, I suppose. I mean, it's not going to be the soul is. Yeah, obviously, we've got negative qualities, but the soul, I would say, holds good qualities that can be developed in the same way, I suppose. I mean, they're not bad or good, are they? At the end of the day, they're just qualities, But I think as the human soul living through life, I think it's the mind and the ego that can create some of these distortions of character,
Yeah, and isn't it funny as well that I actually think the human condition is the problem we have as humans is attachment, whether that be attachment to a relationship, attachment to a substance, attachment. I think the biggest one at the moment is to our phones as well. But isn't it funny how we can sort of departmentalize this, that this, addiction, this attachment is good for us, this attachment isn't so good for us, this is bad for us. But it is the human condition. And if you look at relationships, for instance, how I know I fell into this trap, and I think a lot of us do, especially us sensitive people, how I would want to seek out love in my younger years because actually I didn't feel complete unless I had a partner. So I was and actually that ended up attracting me an abusive partner and domestic violence, that lack of self-love and seeking that out. So it's interesting how these things manifest, and it's also as well, that's what I think the job of us mediums is. Whilst, yes, we're here to bring messages through from the spirit world, with the purpose of bringing through messages of love and obviously proving life after death, I feel like the ultimate thing we're trying to do as mediums is to help people on their journey and heal. So I think it really helps to talk about these things, because I do think we live in a bit of a world now, Jed, where we're sort of putting spirituality as being glossed. It's being made to be a bit glossy at times.
Yeah. I was thinking, while you were saying that, Jace, really, that I think sometimes what it is within us, the spirit and the soul within us is happiness and is peace and is understanding. And I think what we can tend to do is we tend to seek out things outside of us. Let's go and buy some things that will make me feel better. Let's eat some food that will make me feel better. Let's take some drugs that will make me feel better. But all these things are transient, and they make you feel better for 20 seconds, and then you want something else, or it's this continuous cycle. And I sort of think it's by then understanding that happiness and that peace you need is actually deep within yourself. So you've got to go inside rather than outside to try to find that understanding, that peace and that happiness. But obviously, we're not born with a manual on how to live, are we? We have to find these things out.
We do indeed. And I think that You touched on something there that is interesting, which is as human beings, I heard something the other day, which was we're always seeking out the next desire. We get one fix here. Oh, okay, whether that's food, okay, right, now I want my breakfast, what am I going to have? We are always going from a state of we're seeking one desire. As soon as that desire is fixed, we've got another desire. So we're always chasing something. And even when I had a conversation the other day,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. ADHD.
That's all right.
I think basically, what's happening is there's that yearning within to get back to God, to get, from the day we're born to the day we pass back to the spirit world. There's that yearning to find meaning and to find, that place of stillness and growth and understanding within us. And I think subconsciously we're trying to find the ultimate, which is happiness and peace in life. And so I think there's a constant yearning, and I think that yearning is the love of God, which is calling us back. But within that yearning to us, we feel like we need to satisfy it. So we're trying to satisfy body and the finite mind with these. It never will satisfy us until we understand that we have to turn within, and that pure peace and understanding is deep within us. So it's very difficult, but obviously it's great to say, but we can't all go and sit in a cave for 20 years to understand that, and neither should we, because I think we're spiritual beings living a human existence, and I think that's the really important bit. We've got to live a human existence. We can't just turn away from all that in order to try to find some peace and stability in life. We have to try and find double-edged sword, really, where we've got our understanding and that understanding of the God within, but then we've also got life as well, so that we can find a sort of a balance between the two. I don't think it's good either that way or that way. I think we need to, because we need to grow, we need to learn, we need to go through pain, we need to learn love, we need to learn hardship, we need to learn suffering, and we're not going to do that by sitting in a cave.
Well, exactly. I now know that I just know this. I know all the suffering that I went through in my 20s, and it was very difficult. And I'm someone that never learns anything the easy way either. I see some things I learn the easy way, but the majority of things I like to take the scenic route. Sometimes the very scenic route. I take the boat rather than the plane. But I do think that I understand why I've gone through those lessons now, because I know my calling is to be a medium. And, this isn't something that I would even say I wanted to pick to be a medium, because actually it's a very hard journey of self-reflection. But I understand what you say when you say that God was calling you, there was that yearning to be connected, because part of the reason my relationship, even with substances and attachment in that regard, was because I had always attached so much of my happiness, like we do in this world we live in, the world of scarcity, birth and death, and scarcity that there's not enough to go around, the commoditized world that we live in now, rather than the one of land like we used to, of all of the land. But where am I going with this now? I go down these bloody rabbit holes all the time. ADHD, Jed. Yeah. ADHD. But the point I'm making is, even when I was doing that, it was because like we do in society, so much of our success is once you have a good job, once we have money. Oh, we all think money is the absolute, if we won the lottery tomorrow, how many times have we all said that? If I win that, then I'm going to be truly happy. And for me, I've gone through all of this trauma, come out the other side, dusted myself down, so to speak, got to this point as well in my career where I built. And then I just thought, I'm bloody miserable. I've got everything that society said I should have had, but I'm miserable. And it was because the only thing that was going to give me what I needed was that truth and that connection to God that we are, even that revelation in itself. And it even took me a while to be au fait with the word God, dare I say it.
I mean, I think we have to be careful as well with mediumship, because mediumship itself can become quite addictive. And self-satisfying. You know, I mean, we all like to give messages and get the yeses because that fulfills our self-esteem, for one.
Oh, it gives us a dopamine hit, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And sometimes we can get addicted to the phenomena of what we're actually doing, you know. And I'm not afraid to say that, I mean, I started this log sort of nearly 20 years ago, and to begin with, I massively wanted to have yeses all the time and to get the best evidence. And wow, did you see what I got there? you do, it's just normal. But I think well, hopefully, you grow past that stage when like anything, the mediumship and the phenomena, you start to find the root within that of what the beauty and the clarity within the phenomena, rather than it just being like circus tricks. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I mean, I think we have to look at this all the time. I mean, these people that decide to do mediumship for a career option, good luck to you, but
do you know what? I actually get quite. Well, my relationship with readings is I wouldn't say that I seek them out myself, because, well, I'd end up doing that thing where I get in my head, well, not so much anymore, but I had that thing where I get in my head the pressure before the reading. Oh, my God, the expectation of getting the answers, even that concept, of being right and whatever it's, you have to go through so many different stages, I found, of sort of learning, growth, dots connecting all along this journey of trying to navigate life. And you made an interesting point, because you when you said circus tricks, it's very relevant. Simon James's book Magician to Mystic very much talks about that, where you sort of do these feats of amazement where you bring through evidence, but then to go on that journey of a medium, that's why I think it's a calling. It's not a career. I think people can have it as a career, but it is a calling first and foremost.
Well, do you know what? Like, I have to think, unless you get something ego, an ego boost from, if you're, I don't know, if maybe you want to be on the stage and entertain people and do a tap dance, maybe being on a platform for somebody like that is good for them. But personally, I started the platform, about 17, 18 years ago, for about 3 or 4 years, and I absolutely traumatized myself because I just wasn't ready to go on the platform. I didn't understand myself enough, let alone the mediumship, and I literally traumatized myself. And it's only like over the last 3 years where I'm finally finding an understanding of myself as a human being and who I am as Jarrod, this character of Jarrod that walks the earth. I'm finally coming to peace with that. And I'm finally come to a place where I don't need to do circus tricks anymore. I just want to be in the presence. I just want to share that love and that presence of the spirit world. And, and through that, through just being in that presence, and joining with the other people that have come to be part of and witness that power of God, through that presence, allow the spirit world to communicate how they want to communicate. Don't even plan it. Just go and just be in the presence and just be open in the silence and just be authentic, and the mediumship will take care of itself. You don't have to. I mean, you do need some sort of structure and some sort of techniques in some respects, but the purity of the mediumship is to get out of your own head and just allow that power to express itself. And that's very different to how I was 17 years ago.
Well, yeah, you it's I keep saying this, it's the simplicity, isn't it, that makes it so difficult, because but I always remember the first time I ever got up on a platform to do a mediumship reading. It was on one of my first ever interactions of ever doing mediumship. Someone said, "Oh, just come up in front of people and do it." And I didn't think about it. I got up there. I didn't overthink it. Nothing. I just saw it as an experiment. Then the expectations start arriving.
Exactly.
Jarrod, after that, well, that happened. Why hasn't that happened? And it took me a very long time to even be able to do a reading that ever came close to that first ever reading. Partly that was because, the spirit world was showing me my potential, but a big part of that was because I needed to go away and really work on it. And even now, I always just try and clear my mind and whatever when I go into that scenario the best I possibly can. But you're right. You've got to, there is no point even planning, thinking. Well, thinking is the problem. No thinking required.
I mean, imagine how difficult it must be for the spirit world where they want to just, let's take spirit communicator. They want to express their love to their loved one that they know is in the congregation that night. But then we come along with hang-ups of, oh God, the evidence has got to be this. What if nobody comes? Oh, I had a bad day at work. I didn't sleep well. Blah, blah, blah. All these hang-ups. If we imagine we've got like a drain pipe where we're trying to have the water just flow through, and then all these hang-ups of stones and moss and everything else that we put into it's a bit of a nightmare that we present for them, really.
Well, it's like trying to have a conversation. I can't imagine what it must be like in the spirit world for them. They're coming down here to communicate, and it's not a clear phone line that they've got at all.
Yeah.
They've got, it's the equivalent of, trying to talk when there's 10 other lines going on, all this clutter in our minds and whatnot. And, I don't imagine they get frustrated. I wouldn't like to think that's an emotion they possess in the spirit world. But I can imagine it's not banging their heads. Why? Yeah. Why can't I get through? Jason's doing it again. He's asking me for a name.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Asking for a name. You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
How old are you? What car did you drive? What do you look like? I don't know. All these questions that we deem that some people deem that's how we should do mediumship. What a load of rubbish. That spirit communicator knows what they want to come and express to their loved one. Who are we to say, well, you've got to do it this way, and then give me this little bit of evidence? And who are we to say that? Who are we to stand in the way of a father that has got this only one chance to tell his daughter he loves her? Who are we to say that you need to tell us what car you drove and what your shoe size is and everything else? I just don't think that's correct at all. I think we just have to, as much as possible, try and get out of our own head and offer the spirit world power to be able to manifest in that way, and just try and keep out of the way while Dad tells Dolly how much he loves her.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you, what are some of the greatest lessons that you felt along the way then in your mediumship, or you felt that the spirit world have taught you about mediumship or about yourself?
Let me know. Everything, so many lessons. I'll get onto how my development sort of went shortly, but, the biggest one for me has been wanting to do platform at that time. And I don't think we can go around saying I want to do this and I want to do that. I think what I've learned now is that we just need to sit. Obviously we can have intention, and we can have, I think I like the look of that, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but I think we just need to sit in the quiet, in the old, like they used to do in the olden days, and just allow these gifts and qualities to manifest from our soul, and do what, and do the form of mediumship that we're being led along to do, rather than trying. I want to be a trance healer, so I'm going to go to Alpha College for 10 weeks and go and study trance healing. Do you know? I don't know.
Someone did say something on that point to me recently, and it's what you want, Jed, is immaterial.
But it's not about us, is it? That's the thing. That's what we forget.
But also, by having a desire and a want, what you're also doing is you are not allowing yourself, then you're closing your mind So you're fixating on a thing, whereas actually what you might, if you see, like you say, I know I'm meant to be a platform media, but that as an example, you could say I want to be there, but actually you're meant to be a healer. You know,
exactly.
You're not allowing the spirit world to tell you or help you.
Yeah, I mean, going very, very far back. I mean, when I first started to unfold, I did, I started with meditation to try to get my life sorted at the time, and through that, I started to have some little experiences. Well, I remember during that summer, I was living over by Stratford-upon-Avon, and it was like in the countryside, and I wasn't working, and I used to have a lot of time in the day, basically. So I used to go walking, and I always remember to sit by the side of this cornfield, and the cornfield used to blow in the wind, and I found that it was starting to entrance me. This, and it was almost like I was understanding some teaching from this cornfield, and not in words, but just in unspoken words, in energy and power, and that was a massive learning curve for me, in the respect of, we expect the spirit world and and our helpers and our guides. Some people do hear them, I hear sporadic words. I sometimes see my helpers, but but I know majoritively when I just sit in the silence, I know when I'm being held by the spirit world. I know when they're just holding me, and they're giving me teaching, and they're unfolding things within me without having to give me a physical teaching on it. It's been taught in a more energetic way. So I've really learned just to listen with my whole being, really. And that's not just listening for words. It's just allowing those teachings just to be downloaded, really, I suppose, is the best way to look at it, without even knowing what they are. And again, the natural world. I mean, you talk about learning. I mean, look at the natural world, and the seasons. The seasons of change of this world. The way that trees, they help each other. If you've got a tree that's not got enough nutrients and is dying, then all the other trees around it, they share their nutrients to this tree.
Yes. Well, they do, and I've seen it where you see these things, and I always want to say where I've seen it, but I know I've seen it on some program or somewhere. For all the trees, they communicate with each other, and I always feel sorry. At the end of my garden, my neighbour has this one really big tree at the end of its garden, but there's no trees at all around, and I always look at that tree and send it love.
Go and talk to it, Jason.
I do.
Give it a bowl of milk.
It's looking very healthy. Maybe it's because it's not having to share its nutrients. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fascinating, though, isn't it? I mean, we take the natural world for granted, don't we? I mean,
so much so.
It's service in action, the natural world. Just that, what we're talking about, the trees, that's service in action. Now, that is pure spirituality. That is pure service of giving of itself, not because it wants to say, hey, did you see how much sustenance I gave that tree? I gave that sustenance to that tree.
Its branches.
Exactly, yeah. Look at me, look at my ego, It's not about that, is it? It's just pure service.
My trunk is bigger than your trunk, Jess.
Exactly. And why should we be any different from the sparrow or the tree?
Exactly.
We're part of this. We're part of this universe and this world, and it's only our minds that holds ourselves in such high esteem over the rest of life. But you whip up a good storm, and you get nature growling, and the biggest ego in the world, it doesn't stand a chance, does it? Really, we're not in control at all.
Well, no, we're not. And, the more we keep trashing this planet, the more it's, almost breathing its fire back at us, quite literally.
Exactly.
Honestly, I used to sort of have a hug of a tree when no one was looking, sort of looking over my shoulder like I was having some kind of affair with it. Now I don't. Now I do not care if you see me hugging it. I'll probably start snogging it as well, Jed. I love trees.
Have you noticed, Jace, that like when you go for a walk, say, either on your own or with somebody else, and you go out in nature, let's say it's a sunny day as well. Have you ever noticed how when you close your eyes to the sun, it takes you into an altered state without doing anything, just by putting your face to the sun and closing your eyes?
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? The same way as well, when you're walking along through a forest, you notice your power open up and you start attuning to the environment around you. And I truly believe that we're again, those unspoken words, we don't need to speak. We don't need to say anything. We're giving of our power, and that power is giving back to us. There's this continual flow of power between different aspects of nature and different aspects of life. And this is what we forget. But we think we can go to the Arthur Findlay College for 2 weeks and we're going to come out and be a medium. Fair enough. But I would say, save your money and go for a walk in nature for a couple of weeks and see how you come out at the end of it, you know?
I find as well, I do find that in the sun, and actually in the summer, I always find myself after work, there's this little beauty, there's a beauty spot next to where I am, which you're not meant to go up to because it's a reservoir. We do not enter signs. But anyway, nonetheless.
ADHD.
Yes, jumping at signs. But I go up there, I treat it like my own private lake, you know. I go up there to say I'm doing a good thing for the people of Bristol because I'm checking their water supply. But when I sit up there and the sun hits me, I do always find myself drifting into that. But I also find that as well with the moon, when the moon is, you know, particularly prevalent or whatever, if I'm ever to sit under that, I find the same thing. And actually, I am sure I have felt before when walking through a forest, a tree almost trying to send me some kind of greeting. Once I felt the tree's energy sort of waving at me, and I thought I was
absolutely. But you know, the poets and the mystics of the past, they understood this. I mean, I think it's William Blake, isn't it, who writes the poetry about English countryside, and he's very much on the edge of mysticism. I think he was a mystic, really, Blake, but they know about this relationship between everything, because there is just this constant service of each other, like, I don't know. It just fascinates me. And I really think that, the more that we start to explore ourselves as spiritual beings in a human body, that we have to understand that we're not separate from the earth and we're not separate from the universe. We're a part of it. And we can get very deep teachings by just by being open and authentic within our natural environment. I just think it's amazing.
I think you make some very valid points there, Jed. I want to ask you then, so, we're at the start of the year now. We're recording this on, the 17th of January. Hopefully it won't be too far after that by the time it gets released. I've sort of put myself on the hook now. But, a lot of the lovely listeners here are going to be, turning their attention to, how am I going to get what I want out of my life? This year we're sort of tending to turn our attention now to what we want to achieve. What advice would you offer to people trying to step into their power to really start living in their, true purpose and maybe even, Jed, discovering what that may be?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you have to turn within, don't you, to begin with, and be open to the pathway not being smooth, because, the pathway, the pathway of spiritual understanding and the pathway of mediumship is a rocky path, and it's not for everybody. But by all means, begin to tread it and just try to find at least, even if you can find 10 minutes a day, even 2 minutes a day, if you can just turn your mind to in prayer or to whatever you believe your God may be, your understanding of God, whether that just the thing that makes the stars stay in the sky and the earth turn, that grand power that is within and within everything and within us, just try to just put your mind, quieten your mind just for even a few minutes, and just put your mind to that power. And if you can carry that on a daily practice, making that a little bit longer, you don't really have to do anything. Just learn to quieten your mind, follow your breath, and just allow the true expression of who you are to expand, and then just sit within that quiet and just start to form a relationship with the spirit world and with God. And things will unfold in their own way.
Yeah, I see. It's very good advice. And I would say to anyone in that position wanting to go on that journey that everyone can find 2 minutes in a day. I don't believe that for a second that people can't find 10 minutes if you want to really make an assessment and look in the mirror and be honest with oneself. Start by having a look at your daily screen time, because I'm sure you can shave 20 minutes off that.
I'd say if there's somebody who's a total beginner, I would say to obviously look up meditation and learn the practice of being able to follow your breath. Learn the aspect of trying to let the thoughts flow by. And then when you've got that pinned down a little bit, then maybe look at attunement, sitting in the power, because obviously you use that practice of meditation as in focusing on the breath, etc., within attunement, within sitting in the power. But it's a very different thing. And I think, this isn't going to happen overnight, but after years and years and years of sitting in that power, your truth will become uncovered in its own time, and your way will be shown to you. There's nothing else to say, really, is there? No. And you may find after doing that for a while that you're not a medium, and that you serve in some other capacity. You become a bin man or a writer or a nurse or anything, but it's all like we said, that natural service of the power. It's happening all the time. It can be as simple as walking down the street and smiling at somebody, saying good morning to somebody. That's a sharing of the power. You don't know how that may touch somebody or what they're going through at that time. It's not all about giving messages from a platform. It's about finding an understanding of that power within you, and then sharing that with others for no reason other than just because your soul wants to share with others.
It makes you feel good as well, doing things like that.
Of course it does.
I love making people smile. I do think I'm a natural comedian in some ways, but every morning when I walk into my office, there's this lovely Filipino cleaner, an older lady, and every morning I make it my mission to do something silly to make her smile when I walk in. Sometimes it's a pirouette. It's getting more ridiculous, actually. Every morning I walk in, there's something I do to make her laugh.
But Jace, that's spirituality in action.
But a lot of people don't acknowledge her. Do you know what I mean? So I got to go out of my way every morning to make her laugh. And actually, I see her every morning, and then I bought her this big box of chocolates before Christmas, and she then wasn't in for 8 days, and I said, where is she? The problem was I can't be trusted with chocolates.
But do you eat them all?
I did actually eat them all over the 8 days. So then I had to go buy a replacement box. But that kept happening over Christmas with Toblerones as well. So I bought everyone one of those big Toblerones. And every day I'd get home and find myself eating the triangles. So much so that I then took all the Toblerones in to someone at my office and said, would you mind wrapping a few Christmas presents? And then I took them home. And then I started unwrapping them and eating them. I thought this is going one stage further. So that's attachment in itself to chocolate. But there we go. Jed, thank you so much for coming on to the Soul Sing. It's been
more than welcome.
It's been a delight.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's been I watch all the Soul Sinks, and I absolutely love it, so I think it's such an important thing that you're doing, really. Again, spirituality in action, and well done for everything you're doing, because it really does help people. It helps me. I enjoy watching them.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I need to find like an applause sound effect at the end of that, like we have a live studio audience. Jed, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
Oh, he just warmed my heart. Do you know what I loved about Jed so much was when he first wanted to come onto the Soul Sync, what I was most looking forward to talking to him about was the aspects of his experience, some of the troubles he went through in his earlier life, like addiction, because it really touched on my experience. And I said to you, Jarrod, by you coming on, it really helps me to sort of speak more of my own truth. And I think together we really both healed a bit from that interview, and it was really beautiful. And I think more needs to be done to talk about addiction and these kind of topics, really, because spirituality, yes, we can gloss all over it, it's all love and light, but at the end of the day, it's here to help us live our lives and try and live the best spiritual life we can, which with all the goings on of modern life, that can be very difficult. So that's why here at the Soul Sync, my darlings, that's what we're going to be addressing. So until next time, much